On his visit to CBN's Washington studio, we discussed a range of topics from his vantage point as a former world leader, starting with Israel's war against Hamas.
Israel has every right to defend itself. Every time I talk about this, I say October 7 as many times as I can, because I think the world is forgetting at a time when they're facing the biggest wave of anti-Semitism we've probably seen in decades. I certainly won't abandon them, and I know so many Christians around the world won't abandon them and will stand with them as well. And we should pray for them. We should pray for the people of Palestine as well, that they will one day have a government that cares about their health and welfare and their education of their children, rather than building tunnels and launching terrorist attacks.
From the outside looking in at a country that's often described as a beacon of hope, what are your thoughts about the state of American politics and American affairs right now, in the middle of promoting partisanship and chasing political populism, if you will?
The tone is different, but I think a lot of the problems are the same. And I actually think the way social media works has been the key underminer, I think, of our polity in Western countries. What really upsets me and grieves me is that in politics today, it's not about what's the right thing to do. You don't have a debate about policy or about solutions. You have a debate about who's a good person and who's a bad person. And anything, a bad person says is bad, and anything a good person says is good. Well, that's absurd. and so there's a partisanship which is not just about party. That's always been there. I think there's a greater partisanship now about personalities, and personalities are cancelled, demonised and positioned. And more often than not, well outside what the truth is, because it just suits political opponents to define each other in a negative way.
As I read through your book, I detected this constant tension between the way of the world, which includes the way of politics, and the way of Jesus.
Yeah. Forgiving,
loving, praying for those who persecute you, blessing those who hate you.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? Should that mean that Christians should not be engaged in politics?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I think we're called to be a witness in all walks of life, and no less so in politics. And I met some amazing Christians in politics. Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence are great friends, and were a great blessing to me.
Mike Pence is one of your prayer partners, I learned.
He has been, yes, ever since we first met in Papua New Guinea. And we write about this, both of us write about it in the book. Mike wrote the foreword. And after the meeting concluded, we got rid of all the officials and staff and everybody, and we just sat there and we prayed over the issues that we were wrestling with. But you're right. As a Christian in politics, it can be a hard path to walk. In some ways, you sort of got to look at politics a bit like Teddy Roosevelt did. You're in the arena, you're on the playing strip there, and it's a robust place, and you give it everything you've got. But I think the key thing is that when you leave the arena and when you're not on the arena, that you obviously leave those issues there. You don't carry bitterness, you don't carry resentment. And I've seen that destroy a lot of politicians' lives.
Scott, I wanted to ask you, how have you adjusted to private life now that you've hung up your hat, politically speaking?
Happily and willingly. It's a welcome change of pace after what was really over 20 years in politics, both within the Australian Parliament. I was there almost 17 years, and some 9 years in the cabinet, 4 years as Prime Minister. And so it was a long haul, but one that I really enjoyed doing and felt very fulfilled in having those opportunities. But getting back to family again is wonderful. That's the centre of our lives, and getting back to my own church and all of that. It's just been nice.
Did you learn or discover anything new about yourself in the writing process?
One of the important lessons I learned about forgiveness was forgiveness is not forgetting. Tim Keller used to write about this. His book on forgiveness was just brilliant, and it backed in his teaching over many years. But you can't forgive something that didn't happen, or you think didn't happen, or that you've forgotten. You've got to acknowledge, that cut, that hurt, that was really hard to get through, and that's how it happened. Okay, I forgive that. You've got to take on. When Jesus took on our sin, he took on all the pain of it. And and then he forgave us. You know, it cost him. Forgiveness actually costs you. You have to give up your right to vengeance. You have to give up your right to have a whinge and complain about people and relive the episode in a negative way. If you are going to talk about it, say, yeah, that did happen, but you know what? God changed my life, and if he forgive me, I can forgive everybody. So with forgiveness, you got to deal with the hurt. You don't dismiss it. Don't forget it. You got to process it. That's healthy. But then forgive it. Don't let it own you, direct you, control you.
You know, your Christian faith plays central casting in your life as reflected in the book.
Yeah.
I think it easily could be categorized as evangelism or a discipleship book more than a memoir.
Yeah.
How do you describe it?
I think that's a really good way to put it, because I had no intention of writing a political memoir. I don't read them by other politicians. You can't help but be, somewhat biased in your own favour when you sort of look back on your own account of history. And so I didn't really want to do that. I mean, what I wanted to do was actually set out how important faith has been to me, not just while I was in politics, but throughout my life and the blessing it's been. In Australia recently, when I was doing one of these chats, the journalist said to me, "This reads like a love letter to God." And I said, yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. And, you know, I just give thanks. I do. You know, God's amazing. His plans are for our good. You either believe that or you don't. That's the fundamental point of the book. If you believe that and can get a hold of that regardless of what's happening, his plans are for our good, not our harm, to give us a future and a hope, that's a promise you can take to the eternity bank every day of the week.